So, Craig Beam, welcome to Whiskey Noobs. Thank you for taking some time to talk to me here.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, of course. I spoke to you for those listening. I spoke to you at KBF, the Kentucky Bourbon Festival, and I was really interested by the brand and the story. There was a lot of layers that kind of unraveled as we talked, so I wanted to kind of dig into that in a podcast and let everybody hear it from you. So, from the Master Distiller at Jackson Purchase. So, the first thing I wanted to establish was when we spoke, if I'm not mistaken, you mentioned that you guys launched that weekend, the weekend of KBF or like right before. Is that correct?
Yes, that it was that Thursday of the KBF. Yes, uh-huh. Yes, sure was.
Wow. Okay, so we're still a couple weeks basically into the official launch. How's that been going so far? Has it been exciting?
Oh, it's been great. We're pretty much out of it, really, out of the product right now. I think it might be a few bottles here and there, but I I think somebody told me we sold like 600 bottles during the Kentucky Bourbon Festival at our
Wow,
booth.
that's amazing.
And then, of course, the local liquor stores in Bardstown actually sold out. And then they came back, restocked them, and then they sold out again. Um,
Wow.
then this past week down in Fulton, Kentucky, right up the road from where the distillery is in Hickman, there was a banana festival down there. So Jackson Purchase had a big booth set up, and we offered bottles for sale down there also to the public. And I don't know, we sold like 260 bottles there. Of course, it's quite a bit of smaller community. It's a farming community, so it wouldn't. I really thought it really went over really well down there. So
Yeah,
yeah,
that's
that's
pretty
it's
amazing.
been moving right now. We're planning on doing another bottling here in the next few weeks.
Okay, I want to remember to circle back to that other bottling because I do have some technical questions about how you guys are doing things. But I want to start with you. So we'll get into the brand and the technical stuff with contract distilling and what you guys are specifically doing. But starting with you because you are not new to the whiskey industry, if I understand correctly. So
Right.
could you just lay out for us your career path this far and what brought you to Jackson Purchase?
Okay. Well, I started at Heaven Hill in 1983, and I was uh, I was working my father Parker Beam, who was there at Heaven Hill, and he was the master distiller at the time. Of course, my grandfather also started at Heaven Hill in 1946, and he was back then they didn't call them master distillers, they called them head distillers. And when I started in 83, my grandfather was 83 years old at the time, and he was still working at Heaven Hill a couple of days a week and making what we call our jug yeast, which is our strain of our yeast, making a new batch every week. And so I started there at Heaven Hill, got to work with my father and my grandfather on days when we made our yeast. And they showed
Mhm.
me both of them showed me how to make it. And I don't know, 6, 8, 9 months, whatever it was, they finally felt confident that I wasn't going to mess it up. So they turned the yeast operation over to me. And then, as, as, I guess 2000 and somewhere around year 2000, my father kind of semi-retired, and then I became the head distiller. And then the last several years, Dad and I got to travel together, going to Whiskey Fest events, or Chicago, Washington D.C., San Francisco, and New York. Think we went down to New Orleans a few times for some trade shows down there as well. Anyway, Dad ended up coming down with ALS in around 2012, and he never did retire. Of course, my grandfather never retired either. He just got where he couldn't come out to work anymore, and he passed away. Then, of course, Dad, when he got ALS, he never retired. He stayed as active as he possibly could. Well, 2014, he got quite a bit worse. We had a family business on the side. We farmed about 300 head of cattle, and my father had 40 semi trucks, and I had 20 semi trucks. And his dad got worse, and of course, there was a whole lot there to try to keep running, and plus trying to work at Heaven Hill too. And I've been there 32 years, so I decided just to retire out from Heaven Hill, help my father in his remaining years to run the family business. Of course, I had 20 semi trucks at the time myself. Um, so, uh, Dad finally passed away in 2017. We sold off his semi trucks, and we still got the cattle, still got all the farms. In fact, I've got my semi trucks. I've probably increased them for 6, 7 more, since then. Trying to help my mother through that. Like I said, we sold my father's semis off because we didn't need all that. Too much there to take
Mhm.
care of. Uh, I wasn't looking for a job when I heard about Jackson Purchase, and long story short, somebody contacted my wife, Nicole Beam, and said if you need, of course, my semis, I was also haul grain to all the distilleries as well. So,
Mhm.
if you need grain, call Nicole Beam. And so Nicole got talking. My wife got talking to David Salmon, who was one of the founders of Jackson Purchase. He's now our COO at Jackson Purchase. Anyway, they got talking to each other, and then David realized that, hey, Nicole's married to Craig, me. And anyway, so I'll have him to give me a call. Well, I came home from the farm one day, and my wife told me that all about David Collin. And so, well, that's a little far off. I said, it's going to take somebody's got to be there every day to get it up and running. Because I'm
Mhm.
still, this was like May of 2021, and when I got the call, and uh, we get ready to cut hay and work our cattle, all that. So I just kind of just let go in one ear after the next. Then later on, David called back again. And so finally he ended up deciding to just go ahead and call him, see what he's got going on there. So,
Mhm.
of course, I told him right out the gate, David, of course, I live in Bardstown, that's almost 250 miles away from me. And of course, the distillery had been shut down for about 5 or 6 years. I said,
Mhm.
you're gonna need somebody that's gonna have to be on board there. You're gonna have to be there every day to get it up and running. And so anyway, he talked me into coming down there just to meet him and Lloyd Jones. Lloyd Jones grew up down in that area. Lloyd and David are neighbors in Louisville. So and Lloyd grew up in Fulton. So Lloyd is our CEO at Jackson Purchase. So I made a trip down there. My wife and I did spend a day down there walking through. But in the meantime, going down there, I got a call from Terry Ballard. Terry was at Willett's Distillery. He'd been there
Mhm.
10, 12 years, and he kind of helped Willett's get started up from the ground up. And he had called me and told me he'd left Willits. I said, well, Terry, you'll get a job someplace because, you've been there for, 10, 12 years, got a lot of experience. He can do just about anything. Also, he's a hands-on guy as well.
Mhm.
So, I went down, visit Lloyd and David, and walked through the steering. Of course, I told him, going to have to be somebody that's going to have to be here and almost live down here for quite a few months to get it up and running. And walked through and kind of saw what needed to be done. Of course, right out the gate, going to have to do some good cleaning, that's for sure. Uh, and I told him then, I said, hey, I know somebody that might be interested, Terry Ballard. I said, he's a single guy. You don't all his children are grown. And I said, of course, he lives right outside of Bardstown, in a little town called named Bloomfield, Kentucky. So I called Terry and I said, hey, I might have a job for you. I don't know if you want to come down here and live. You might have to live down there for a while, live in a motel or something. So anyway, Terry went down, visited David and Lloyd, and a week or so later, and he called me back. So I told him I'd give him 90 days and see how everything worked out. And so, okay, well, good. And so I don't know. A few weeks passed by. Lloyd, David called, said they wanted to meet me. So they were coming back to Louisville. And I said, well, just stop by the house. I'll be home such time. course, they did. They came by the house. We talked for several hours. Of course, I told them, again, my position that, I couldn't be there all the time. But I said, I
Mhm.
understand Terry could help you out. And I said, I don't know, maybe if you need some consulting work or something, I could maybe do that for you, on the side a little bit. I said, they said, well, could you work 15, 20 hours a week, taking phone calls, emails? We'd like for you to come to the steering, work with Terry and help him out, oversee that, see if you can help him get up and get going. They didn't tell me any day I had to be down in the steering. They didn't tell me when to come or not come. But of course, I knew, and I guess they threw out a kind of a number there for me. So I thought, well, okay, I guess I'll try it. As long as everybody understands, 15, 20 hours a week, and I come and go do what I need to do, and I'll do that.
Mhm.
Anyway, I started couple, let's see, yeah, so about middle of May, I started going down to the distillery. I'd get about 3 in the morning. I'd drive down and spend all day with Terry, and we got local vendors around and got people hooked up to come and help us get stuff going. And did that for, I don't know, for 4, 5, 6 weeks. And of course, I'd drive down, come back same day, and get back home about 9 at night. And of course, talk to Terry throughout the week on the phone, and we'd have little over the phone meetings, I guess. And then finally, as we got closer, going to get started up, I could see. So then which was about, I guess, time we got everything up and running, and it was about the end of July. So I started staying down a few days, a little bit more, and we'd hired 1 or 2 people, and by August the 1st of 2021, we made our first barrel of whiskey after we took
Wow.
over the middle of May. So I was well pleased that, not knowing what we had a vague idea of where lines went, but we didn't know why water would be squirting up out of the ground here and there, where this line went to, and this line was busted, and this and that. It's kind of typical stuff, I guess, you don't know about what lines are. So, but yeah,
Mhm.
we made our first barrel August 1st, 2021. And the little distillery would make about 25 barrels a day. And everybody, of course, word of mouth got around about Terry and I being down there and the experience that we both had. We didn't go knocking on the doors trying to get business. It was right out the gate. We had people coming to us at Jackson Purchase. And made a standard mash bill. We had a 70 percent corn, 20% rye, and 10% malt, which that's what our new brand is right now. Jackson Purchase, our standard mash bill. Of
Mhm.
course, we started out being a contract distiller. Uh, we realized we're going to have to add on to the current distillery, the little 25 barrel a day distillery. So we put in 8 more fermenters. By December 2021, we had all those put in, and we got it up to 50 barrels a day. And we ran 7 days a week. I don't know, we hired about 6, 7, 8 people. We didn't have any warehousing at the time. We had shipping containers lined up around the distillery. We would put about 80 barrels. They would hold about 80 barrels apiece. We had somewhere around 10 shipping containers. The whole time we was looking for warehousing, some kind of building or something in Hickman, which you didn't have a lot of choices there. However, there was
Mhm.
a 75,000 square foot building that used to be a blue jean factory. It was built in the mid '90s, and they went out of business and shut it down and didn't run it about a year. It was a nice building, concrete building, had truck docks all the way around it. It had about 17, 18 acres that came with it. So we ended up buying that, and we started palletizing our whiskey in there. And and so then we realized we still wasn't making enough whiskey. So 2023, we started looking into building a new distillery right beside the smaller one. So we did. We ended up building put in a 13 more fermenters, 20,000-gallon fermenters, and 3 mash cookers, a 36-inch column, all copper steel, which we had a 24-inch copper steel. We still got that. We're running both of them right now. We
Hmm.
put in two new boilers, two 600 horsepower boilers, and then we built a new cistern room where we can fill more barrels. So by January 2024, we got it up and running, and we can make 240 barrels a day. We ran that for about seven days a week, and
Wow.
so yeah, we've made let's see, we filled 100,000 barrel this past June. So we got about 115,000 barrels in storage right now. And of course, again, we're a contract distiller. We always thought we would put barrels aside, a few barrels each month, just in case we were to ever decide to come up with a brand down the road.
Hmm.
Um, we also went ahead. I thought, well, I'd like to build two traditional rick warehouses on site at the distillery, and we ended up buying another. At the distillery had about 15 acres. We ended up buying another 15 acres, and we built two new traditional rick warehouses on site. And factory got probably, I don't know, 15,000 barrels in one of the rick warehouses right now in storage. Uh, I always thought maybe in 5 years we might consider putting out a brand. But then Terry and I started checking it when it got 2 years old, and the color was fantastic even at 2 years old. I was really surprised the color, how dark the color work was at 2 years old.
Hmm.
So that got me thinking. So okay, well, gosh, it's really aging fast down here in Western Kentucky. Of course, I've noticed the weather down there is usually 5 degrees warmer on the average than it is right here in Bardstown and where
Hmm.
most distilleries are. And down there, it stays warmer down there about 4 weeks longer in late in the fall, going into winter, and it warms up about 3 or 4 weeks sooner at like mid March down there versus mid April here in around the central part of Kentucky. Because farmers start planting corn down there at about the middle of March. So with all
Hmm.
that, I think, well, that must be really helping it, age a little faster. And at 3 years old, I was just couldn't believe the color. I mean, the 3-year-old whiskey with samples we were pulling it was like 5, 6 years old, the color was then. And so I started taking samples on trade shows last year at 3 years old, 3.5 years old, and the proof was about a 122 and 125 proof. Just letting people come up at our booth just to try it. And
Hmm.
they were just so amazed that they couldn't believe it was 3 years old and that high proof and how smooth it was then. So then really got us excited. So then we thought, well, okay, maybe we can get by with, putting it out there at 4 years old. And of course, it turned 4 years old this past August. And so we
Hmm.
started talking about, well, we actually started planning in June and started talking about trying to launch a brand out for the Kentucky Bourbon Festival, have it all out by that time. And so, anyway,
Hmm.
that's what we did. We took about 15 of this first batch here. We took 15 barrels and dumped it and came up with our brand, Jackson Purchase, and it's 117.8 proof. And how we came up with that proof, we knew we wanted something not overwhelming. We knew we didn't want maybe anything a whole 120, 125 proof. We knew we wanted cask strength.
Hmm.
Um, So we had a panel here. Me and Terry, we knew what we liked, and so we got 6, 7 more people. Just we wanted to make sure that we were on track, and we let the panel check it. We didn't even know what the proof was, and everybody agreed they really liked it. So then we proofed it, and it came out at 117.8. We said, let's just cut it off there. Let's don't rock the boat. Let's don't try to get it any stronger. Let's don't try to cut it anymore. So that's how it came up to 117.8 proof.
Wow, what a journey that's been then. So you have basically been with the team first in an unofficial capacity, then an official capacity, basically since day one, since getting the distillery up and running.
Right.
Now, so you mentioned you started putting out some barrels, you started putting some aside for in case you wanted to come out with a brand in the future. Was that always from the beginning, was that always the plan, was we're going to be a contract distiller, we're going to distill? For those listening who don't know, contract distilling is basically you're distilling for other brands so that they can have the distillate that they want and age it, and then they will come out with their whiskey. Was that always the plan? And then kind of on the side was the branding, or was there from the beginning kind of a thought about doing your own branding?
Well, that was always the thought. We'd always were, possibility that we might have a brand ourselves, and it wasn't going to hurt
Okay.
us if we decided not to. I mean, we can always, sell the whiskey off, but that was always,
Right.
that was always the thought. So just to be on the safe side, we always put a few barrels back for ourselves.
Okay, yeah. And was it were you producing multiple different mash bills for multiple different distillers, and there was one that you gravitated towards, or were you putting out your own recipes and distillers could come try them, or brands could come try them rather?
Well, the first year, that was the only recipe we put out. Everybody liked
Okay.
it. Nobody, the customers didn't say, we'll come up with a different one or other mash bills. It went into a number charred for standard barrel. Wasn't anything different about that. It was pretty standard. Um, we did that mash bill 70, 20, 10 for a good year. And then I think it was 2022, we made a small run of a wheat, uh, I had a wheated mash bill. Uh,
Mhm.
I think a 70, let's see, I got that here somewhere. Um, it was it's 65 corn, um, yeah, 65 corn, 25 wheat, and 10% malt. Yeah, won't have my glasses on here. But anyway, so we came
Mhm.
up with that. We ran a little bit of that, and I think 2022. So some of that'll be 4 years old in another year or so. But we
Wow.
come out with another brand with a wheated brand. That's possible. Don't tell all my
Yeah.
secrets.
Yeah,
But
yeah, that's
now since then, since 2021, we have offered probably a half a dozen different mash bills to our customers. And so a lot of customers said, well, what's wrong with the 70-20-10? We like that. I said, well, hey, that's fine. I mean, we just offer you something a little bit different. And some
Mhm.
of them have latched on some more or different weeded mash bills we had. And we also offered a little higher rye, like a 35% rye. We
Mhm.
also had offered a 95% rye, which we've had a few customers take that. That's a real small run. Uh,
Mhm.
but then also we've offered 36 air dried barrel staves. Barrels, the staves are 36-month air dried, and we've offered that. Of that, we do have one or two customers who are taking quite a bit of that. And of course, this is all new field stuff, new field
Mhm.
bourbon, whiskey. We've offered some toasted barrels also as well with different mash bills. So we've got a few
Okay.
customers picking a little bit of everything. And
Okay,
then
yeah.
we got, then what we got one customer, of course, this American single malt became kind of popular. Everybody started talking about
Mhm.
that. So, and in the March of this year, and 1st of April, we had a customer that wanted 500 barrels of American single malt, and we did that. Now that was my first time of ever making American single malt, and we put that in the used barrels.
Okay.
We got the used barrels from Heaven Hill, because I guess I had the connections, and I knew what came out of those barrels, so I knew what came out of the barrels, those used barrels at Heaven Hill was good. Imagine
Mhm.
that. Since I was there.
Right.
But anyway, so that's what we did. We made 500 barrels back in last of March at 1st of April for a customer. And then we also right now are making 500 more barrels for the same customer of single malt. So
Wow.
having pretty good luck on that as well.
Yeah, no, that's great. So you guys are starting to get a little bit more customization with your mash bills. Do you think with the Jackson Purchase brand using the 70-20-10 mash bill, you've obviously got, that's at least at this age, that's what you have the most of aging right now. When you come out with future batches, you mentioned the 117.8 proof and that you guys went through and tasted it and kind of had a panel and discussed it. Do you think you're going to aim for a similar flavor to kind of have like a flagship small batch, or do you think you're going to aim for different batches to have a little bit different of a personality to them?
I believe it'd be different batches, little different personality to them. Kinda
Yeah,
like
yeah.
having kids, I've got 5 daughters, so each one's got different personality.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Yeah. So the one thing I wanted to really dig into, you mentioned how you noticed that it was aging a little bit quicker. You noticed the color was coming in really nicely down there, and is it's a little bit more southern, so it's got a little bit more heat throughout the year, aging those barrels. Was there a moment? Was there a time where you were tasting it and you were like, "Oh, this is ready. Like this is ready to be bottled right now." Was there like an aha moment for that?
Yeah, especially when it got number 3, 3 when it turned, 3 years old, I thought, "Oh,
Mhm.
wow." I got really excited 'cause I was originally thinking, around 5 years, and, I wanted to make sure we got it right the first time, and I didn't wanna think, "Oh,
Yeah.
well, I didn't wanna put it out too young, but, the
Mhm.
flavor profile that it tasted at 3 years old, 3.5 years old, was just fantastic, and just people, having good reviews on it. There's a big talk of every trade show we went. People was being told, "Hey, go over and see Jackson Purchase. Try this." And
Mhm.
anyway, had a lot of good feedback. So uh, I figured we was on to something. So we
Yeah.
decided that's when we decided just go ahead, and I think we'll be just fine. Because right now that number at 4 years old and the color it's got, it's as dark at 8, 10-year-old, bourbon out there on the right now. So,
Yeah.
fact, I went to a local liquor store during the bourbon festival because they ran out, and I stopped in to sign some bottles, and, I sold a few bottles when I was, at the liquor store, and then I was talking to them, showing them the color, and I pulled a bottle off one of our competitors, off their shelf, and I knew how old it was. Uh I knew it didn't tell on the bottle it was 8 years old, but I knew it was 8 years old
Mhm.
from one of the competitors, and I was showing the difference of the 8-year-old and or 4-year-old, and the difference how darker the 4-year-old that we had was a lot darker than the 8-year-old over here of our competitors. But,
Yeah.
so yeah, and of course I've had all this stuff sitting in my house, 3 years old samples, and I have all kinds of other bourbons from other people and all kinds of bourbons where I used to work from. And that was 8, 10, 12 years old, sitting there looking at the colors and watching all that. So
Mhm.
I was real excited.
Oh, yeah. And obviously, so you've got a ton of experience of tasting bourbons from that more Bardstown, Louisville region of Kentucky. And so when you're comparing it and it is aging faster, do you notice in the character anything different where like a great example would be a lot of times a common thing nowadays is to try to fast age things. And so you've got like maybe smaller barrels, but I'm sure when you put it into a smaller barrel, you have a different surface area to the volume. You get a different flavor. It doesn't just taste older, it tastes different. Do you notice any differences in the character for better or for worse that you're like, this is something that I don't usually get from up in that slightly farther north region?
Well, of course, it went in a regular 53-gallon barrel. It wasn't a
Mhm.
small barrel. So I just noticed the difference. I had maybe the notes of like an 8, 9, 10-year-old would have. That's what I noticed. And of
Okay.
course, it was still young, so you didn't pick
Mhm.
up woody characteristics. You picked up sweetness. I picked up some cinnamon, vanilla, honey, uh, caramel. The same thing that you would pick up, I would think, in an older whiskey.
Yeah. Yeah, and I did taste it at KBF, and I really enjoyed it, which is what spurred this conversation, naturally. And I see what you're saying. It's almost like the characteristics of the older whiskey. It's got that smoothness to it that the age brings, but it's not super oaky, which is what I was kind of getting at. Because sometimes when
Right,
people do like those mini barrels, it's so oaky that it's like it's too much. Whereas
right.
this, like you said, you're still using a normal size barrel. It's almost like it smooths it out, but it maintains some of those lighter notes that the younger whiskey has, like the light sweetness, which is it's really interesting. It's an interesting flavor profile, I think.
Yes, right, right.
Now, moving forward with Jackson Purchase, you've already kind of mentioned that, you're working on different recipes and you're working with different distilleries. Are you guys, is the plan to shift more towards your own brand or to keep the big chunk of the business as contract and then put out your guys' own brand kind of as you go?
We're gonna still, be a contract distiller. I don't
Okay.
think we're gonna have I think everything right now, what I can see, unless who knows, but, I see it's always been a contract distiller, have a few
Hmm.
barrels back for ourselves. Of course, what we put out now will always be it'll be a limited edition, and probably in the future, other things would come out, will probably be a limited edition. It won't be like, just being that'll be available all the time, year round.
Right. Okay. And are you saving maybe specific barrels that you really enjoy for those limited editions? Or is it more the blend at the end that you're like, well, let's try blending together barrels to give us that flavor we're looking for?
We're doing a little bit of everything, saving
Yeah.
some barrels back. Yeah, we might someday come out with a single barrel.
Okay.
That's a
Yeah.
especially now that we got traditional rick warehouses on site too. We can pull from sweet spots in those type of warehouses for single
Yeah.
barrels.
Absolutely. How I know you mentioned it, but I didn't write it down or I didn't take note of it here. How much was the increase in capacity? It was from 25 a day to what now? 25 barrels a day.
240 barrels a day. Run a
Wow.
36-inch column, all copper, and a 24-inch all copper. Yeah,
Wow.
the the, uh, the 24-inch can run 50 barrels a day, and the 36-inch column can run about 170 barrels, something like that a day, on its own. So it can
Wow.
come
Yeah.
down its own. Yeah.
That's amazing. Yeah. Um, okay, so I have a couple of I would say more specific questions. The first being the name Jackson Purchase. Where does that name come from?
Okay. That's funny you asked that. I've even asked I came across some of my teachers that taught me in school, and they didn't know about Jackson Purchase, or how that name came about in Kentucky either. I said, "Really? And you taught me in school?"
Yeah.
Anyway, Andrew Jackson was the president of the United States, I don't know, in the early 1800s, whenever he was. And, of course, Kentucky still wasn't completely settled. The western part of Kentucky was, the Chickasaw Indians had that property
Hmm.
down known as the far western part of Kentucky. And so, Andrew Jackson ended up buying that from the Chickasaw Indians, and that's how that region, western Kentucky, came known as the Jackson Purchase area. So that's how we
Okay.
picked up the name, and we're 3 miles from the Mississippi River, and, so it's got that little steamboat on the back of it. I forgot now if somebody came over there up the Mississippi River on a steamboat, so that's how we came up with the steamboat, on the
Okay.
deed.
So the brand name is really to stake your guys' claim as being in that western part of Kentucky.
Right, right, right.
Okay. That's very yeah, that makes sense. And I like I don't know if this was the plan from the beginning. Was the name established from the beginning or did that come around later? Like it was more like we'll start the distillery then we'll name it.
No, no, it was from the very beginning, right after
Okay.
the yes,
Well, how interesting that, from the beginning the plan was we are from the western part of Kentucky. And then along the way it's like, hey, these are aging very differently than in the eastern part of Kentucky. And so now it really like the name applies really well considering that you've got a little bit of difference in how the barrels are aging.
right, right.
Okay, so a couple of questions. The first one I'm going to say you don't have to answer if you don't want to, but do you have any favorite brands or labels outside of Jackson Purchase that you're willing to disclose? You can plead the fifth if you don't want to.
Well, I mean, I worked for Heaven Hill 32 years, so yeah, I had several good brands that I drank all the time and still do. Evan Williams and Evan Williams 1783 is probably my go-to all the time.
Mm-hmm.
Before Jackson Purchase came along, and then Henry McKenna and Elijah Craig, and of course Evan Williams single barrel, Larceny, which is a wheated bourbon.
Mm-hmm.
So then, of course, we had Bernheim wheat whiskey when I was there. I came out with that while I was at Heaven Hill myself. So yeah, but yeah, some of those brands I go to that all the time.
Okay, yeah. Listeners of the show are gonna know that I also enjoy those brands quite a bit. My go-to anytime anybody asks me like what bourbon should I try? Like I don't want to break the bank, but I want to try bourbon and see if I like it. I always say Evan Williams Bottled and Bond. And then if you want a
Ah,
little bit
that's
less
another good one.
proof, a little bit more approachable, the 1783 is just perfect, right at the 90
Right,
proof.
right.
Yeah. So then that actually spurs another question for me. So you mentioned that you enjoyed those brands and that you're enjoying what you're doing at Jackson Purchase. Being that you were sort of born into the industry in a way, and you got started very young in the industry, did you always love it, or was it at first just work and there was a point where you're like, I think I really love this. I love bourbon. I love the industry around it.
Well, growing up all the time and in it, listening to my grandfather and my father talk about it, what we farmed all the time. Grandfather had cattle as well, and when I was young, and listen to those two talk during the farming operation, during the feeding cattle, and of course, listen to them argue about something too. That's all part of it, I guess. Dad was the son,
Mm-hmm.
and of course, my grandfather was his dad. So I mean, they're kind of like Dad and I. We didn't always agree about something. We'd stop and so just me and him would stop when we'd be baling hay, even after it started at Heaven Hill. And he'd be on one tractor and I'd be on the other, and we'd stop and kind of had a little steering meeting or had a thought about the steering. We'd stop there in the middle of the hayfield, start talking and about something, and then go on and get back on the tractor, bale a little bit more, stop again, and finally said, "Well, I look at the clouds coming." I said, "Dad, we probably better stop stopping because we might get our hay wet if we don't go on and get it up." But get back to your point, your question. I guess just growing up in it, and of course, I was always fascinated with cattle. I guess and working on cows, I'd give them shots and work on myself, and always do what I could, and not have a veterinarian unless something drastic happened.
Mm-hmm.
I always thought I kind of liked to be a veterinarian, but I didn't like go through all that schooling. And then I was kind of fascinated with the weather. I always enjoyed watching the weather, and I always thought, maybe a meteorologist. But again, I didn't want to go to all that school either. So I did some summer work for Heaven Hill. One of the first jobs I had, Dad kind of laughed when he told me what he wanted me to do. There was some warehouses that Heaven Hill bought in 1980, and they've been set vacant, and the birds had roosted in it, the pigeons really bad, and some of the roofing and windows were out of it. So he said, "I got a job for you this summer. Do you have any of your buddies and your friends? That's right, because we're all out of high school. Do they need a job?" So I rounded up several guys, and we started working on that. And that was that was a nasty, dirty mess that was. But I mean, at the end of the day, you look like you was a coal miner. I mean, it was just you just black all over. It was pretty nasty. But anyway, we went on. I went on with it. That was one of the summer jobs. And in fact, some of the boys, some of the guys that I got working at Heaven Hill, still working at Heaven Hill today. That's been almost
Wow.
40, 41 years ago. So they're still working at Heaven Hill. And then another job, I drove a truck over the road for Heaven Hill one summer, did that. And I worked in the bottling house full of had palletizers. I stacked cases on pallets by hand. So I guess just growing up around it, I thought, this might be all right.
Mm-hmm.
And so anyway, Dad put me in the distillery about 1983 as a swing shift supervisor. And I worked on all three shifts with the older guys, and we had old steam pumps my grandfather had bought when he started there. they showed me how to pack the steam pumps and how to, take care, make sure they oiled up every day, and just learning from the old guys. Don't go with the attitude
Mhm.
that you know everything. And I started that, I thought, well, like Dad said, your last name's Beam, so I get you a foot in the door anyway. That don't
Yeah.
mean you're gonna succeed, or it helps, I guess. But um, so yeah, so I never thought I'd be where I'm at today. Never thought I didn't know where it was going to go. I just figured I'd just be, just a regular guy, which I am a regular guy. But so
Absolutely.
yeah, so yeah,
Yeah,
so
so
I got where I was enjoying it.
yeah, yeah, it sounds like just enjoying the process every step of the way. Even even when it's a far cry from master distilling cleaning out an old building.
All right, right, right. Of course, what the several years there when I was got out of it, trying to take care of Dad, and I wasn't looking to get back in it. But I had
Mhm.
a trucking business that I hauled grain to all the distilleries. I knew all what their schedules were, because they sent
Mhm.
me their schedules when they need corn, rye, malt, or wheat. And so I always kept well connected with what everybody was doing. I was great
Mhm.
friends with all the other distillers, with the Jimmy Russell's, the Wild Turkey, and of course Booker No when he was alive, and his son Freddie's now, and good friends there, and of course Baker Beam, Dad's first cousin Baker, at Jim Beam, and just Jim Rutledge, when he was at Four Roses, so just well connected with everybody still, and of course Steve Dally,
Mhm.
he was at Maker's Mark. I followed him to Wyoming Whiskey, and he went to Wyoming Whiskey and left Maker's Mark. Then he came back and joined Bardstown Bourbon. So yeah, Steve, and know him really well. Greg Davis when he's at Barton's, and then he left and went to Jim Beam, and so yeah, it just great times, really. Great friendship.
Yeah.
We all had the same type equipment, really, used the same
Mhm.
type of vendors. If somebody needed a part or a bearing, or somebody's dropped a load of malt into the corn bin by mistake, and then if we had an extra load sitting, whatever was needed, we all helped each other out.
Yeah, I always thought that was an amazing part of the Kentucky bourbon story is how much first of all the distillers were all friends and the families all know each other and like you just mentioned they all help each other out. And I find that really amazing. I know there's obviously been a lot of times in history where the distillers had to help each other out in a pinch and I think that's really a great I don't know. It's a great part of the story because I think nowadays we view everybody as competing all the time and it's really cool that, everybody to mention those connections and how friendly everybody is down there. Do you think you still see that a lot in the Kentucky bourbon world? Do you still see strong connections and everybody getting along?
Well, yeah, I think especially on the production end, I mean, of course, you got
Mhm.
new people nowadays, that probably don't understand how that really is or has worked, or maybe they don't realize it because they didn't grow up with it all that way, all that well.
Mhm.
But overall, yeah, I think everybody's well connected. Really, there's no big secrets. I had a malt supplier tell me one time he had some malt somewhere closer to Jackson Purchase. I said, "Well, why didn't you tell me you had it so close to us?" And he said, "Well, it's a secret." I said, "A secret? It ain't no secret in this business. I pretty well know. You don't even have to tell me who it's going to, and make a phone call and find out in 30 seconds."
Yeah.
But anyway,
Right.
there's no secrets. We've all worked together and talk about prices of grain, malt prices when there's a crucial shortage several years ago, and um, when it became a barrel shortage a couple of years ago, and everybody's allocated, and how we all pitched in, helped each other out during all that time. It's just we all work together.
Mhm. Yeah, and I think that's great too, like not having the secrets because then it becomes more about what personality you want the brand to have. It's not like, well, let me copy this guy's homework. It's more like, yeah, we're all doing the same thing, but we're coming out with our own flair and our own twists and our own
Sure.
our own
Right.
flavor.
Right. Right.
Now, That being said, so there's a bunch of different flavors. There's all different ways you can go in the distilling world. What's the most unique or exciting project that you've worked on? And I'm gonna limit this to distilling projects because maybe the most unique was cleaning out that old building. but in
Yeah.
terms of distilling, what was the most unique or exciting one that you've worked on?
Well, I think was exciting was the single barrel program that, Heaven Hill had, picking
Okay.
out barrels, going in the warehouse, picking out the what we call the sweet spots in the warehouse, and which
Mm-hmm.
warehouses had the sweet spots versus some warehouses you may not always had the sweet spots. Some warehouses did better than others due to airflow and the geographic area they were sitting at. Just doing that, and we'd had customers coming in wanting to pick out a barrel, maybe 2 barrels. And I would have 5 or 6 sitting on the floor that I picked out different floors, and just having people coming in and sales guys, salespeople would come in, or customers that wanted to buy their own barrel for restaurants or a liquor store and bought it under their name. And I
Mm-hmm.
picked the barrels out and draw samples and let everybody try it. And I know what I liked, and I would never tell everybody what I liked till after what they picked. That's why I don't want to tell you what I liked. All are the customers, so I don't want to put words in your mouth.
Mm-hmm.
So that was always exciting, and it's just
Yeah.
always exciting, I guess, going out seeing, doing what you like, and hopefully the customer and everybody else will like the same taste profiles that you like, and
Mm-hmm.
must be hitting on something that's all worked out pretty well, really.
Yeah, yeah. Do you see Jackson Purchase coming out with a single barrel selection program or only coming out with a single barrel label that is the Jackson Purchase single barrel?
Well, I see they could come out the single barrel,
Okay.
down the road. Now I don't might not even it may not even be labeled Jackson Purchase, maybe off from Jackson, a spin off of Jackson Purchase. Well, that's something possible. There's all kinds of things that you could think about, go on and on. So we'll just see what side of the coin lands.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Are there any other things, and maybe it was already mentioned with like the single malts, things like that, but is there any other projects going on at Jackson Purchase or any potential developments, let's say, that you want to talk about or that you find interesting, or just anything to look out for in the future from Jackson Purchase?
Well, it'd be different mash bills as I was telling you to come out down the
Hmm.
road. So that'd be some different taste profiles. We're experimenting with other barrels, so
Yeah.
that'd be something down the road that come down the road several years from now. So
Yeah.
always got a few things in the works.
Yeah, 100%. And I'm sure that you don't want to always disclose all of them, but I appreciate you telling me about what you have told me so far. So, it's really exciting, and it's exciting to see a distillery that is obviously, in terms of being released, is totally brand new. So it's really exciting to see where things have come from the 25 barrels to the over 200 barrels a day to the one mash bill to all the different mash bills now. I think that's really it's just exciting to see, and it's exciting to see grain to glass, and you guys doing the actual distilling and aging. So that's a lot of fun. Yeah, I mean, I think you've really answered all my questions. I want to leave with one kind of off the wall one. Are there any beers, wines, or spirits that you enjoy drinking outside of whiskey? Anything else that you're like you enjoy the craft of or the flavor of?
Well, I'm not a big beer drinker. Uh,
Okay.
I guess my young years, I used to drink a lot more. I I'd be lucky if I drank 6 beers a year.
Yeah.
Yeah, I do like some of these, in Bardstown, there's a place called Scout and Scholar. Of course, they offer bourbons too, but they have a lot of heavy beers, high IPAs, that sort of thing, and
Hmm.
beers that they're aging, like, out of Heaven Hill barrels and, all the other distilleries barrels. So, if I go there, of course, it's like 10 or 12% alcohol, just to something a little different, and, of course, they offer some food there, so I might drink a couple of those, that
Hmm.
they're got a little bit more flavor profile to it than not all watered down, but
Hmm.
Occasionally I'll drink some wine, but just on occasion, not very much. I mean, I don't know. I definitely drank a dozen bottles of wine in a year's time, but just
Hmm.
sometime I might drink a bottle of wine. They're just on occasion. And I ask me what brand, I don't know. I experiment with everyone out there just about just to try something different. So
Yeah, that's exactly how I am with wine.
usually
I don't know any.
usually I like the reds better.
Okay, Reds, yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
That's exactly how I am. I don't know what brands I'm drinking. I just like to try different ones. But I'm always curious about that because, like, within the whiskey industry, we all enjoy a very similar flavor profile. We enjoy bourbon, but we enjoy different, some like the wheat, some like a little more rye. And so I'm always interested what people like
Now,
outside of that.
now, I will. I have been out on the farm before. The winter would be cold, wet, nasty. Been cold, and chilled all day, and I've come home and since of course we made rye whiskey at Heaven Hill, the Rittenhouse rye, and it's 100 proof, and 4 years old, and I
Mm-hmm.
might pour me some of that and have me just drink that and eat, sit by the fireplace, trying to warm up and dry out. So that's hot, spicy, 100 proof. I'll warm you up quick.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Do you find yourself leaning more towards high rye bourbons then when you drink bourbon, or wheat, or just either or?
Uh, I I don't like. I mean, the Rittenhouse rye was 51%, and to me that's
Mm-hmm.
plenty. That's plenty.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah, I'm not much on the 95% rye or anything. Anything over 51% rye, I'm not much on that myself. The
Yep.
wheat, well, we made larceny. It's 18-20% wheat. That's good. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I find for me it always just depends on my mood most of the time. It's
Well,
which is
that's
what's
true
great
too.
about it,
Yeah, that's
you
true.
know?
Sure. Right.
Yeah, it's great having so much variety and being able to pick based on what you're feeling. Sometimes I'll even go for a little peated scotch if I'm feeling adventurous, but
No, no.
sometimes that's a lot.
I haven't been able to get with that yet. I've tried it a
Yeah.
few times, but that's not me. Yeah, yeah.
Yep.
Now, occasionally I might have a Bloody Mary, but that's very rare. That's time I might have that from sitting at the airport or something waiting on a flight. But of course
Mhm.
I'm not a vodka drinker. I just mix something else with vodka. I'm not much on that. And even the
Mhm.
flavored vodkas, I thought that would help it, but it didn't help me any.
Yeah.
Tequila, I mean, I might drink a margarita occasionally, but I'm not much a good tequila. Now I have taken a shot or two of that before, but that's very
Mhm.
rare. A bottle of
Yeah.
tequila lasts me a year at least.
Yeah, yeah, and it's such a different flavor, but at least for me, at least it has flavor, whereas vodka just kinda tastes like
Oh yeah,
alcohol to me. It's
right,
just like
right, right.
yeah. All right. Well, I really appreciate you taking the time to sit down. This has been fantastic. I love all the background on the distillery. I can't wait to see where you guys are going and to try your future releases because I was very impressed with what I had at KBF, and I'm glad to hear you're having a successful launch. So just
Well,
thank you
thanks,
once again
Chris.
for coming on, and good luck with the continued launch.
All right, Chris. Thank you very much. Nice talking to you.
Hi there. If you're still listening to this, then I'm going to assume that you enjoyed the show. So please consider taking a moment to leave a 5-star rating or review and subscribe on whatever platform it is that you're watching/listening to this on. And as always, please, please, please drink responsibly. Cheers.